Welcome back to Sports Psych, everyone. Yes, it's springtime. There's buds on the fruit trees. Yay! Okay, and so we're really at the end of the course now. So I figured, what the heck, I look all professorial for you. Got the blazer going, put the glasses on. So what we're going to do today is finish off Chapter 10 on team cohesion, and then talk about Chapter 11 in terms of leadership. Basically, these two, topics go hand in hand with each other, and that's because this is really, basic type of social psych. Talking about group processes, how groups interact with each other, and if you have a group, some leader is going to emerge from that group. So what makes good leadership, and how does that affect team cohesion? Okay, so again, to finish off the chapter on team cohesion, the one thing I didn't mention is the different models in terms of how team cohesion progresses, basically in terms of the development of a team. Okay, and there's three major models. One's the linear model, basically that the team goes in a particular order in a straight line. That is, it forms first. You get the team together, you form the team, and at that point, then you start working together, and inevitably there's going to be some conflicts. Okay, so the second stage of the linear model is then storm, as they call it. Again, the idea that not everybody's going to work well together initially, but you actually do start to figure out how to work together. And that third stage is called norm. And then once that happens, then you get to the fourth stage where things do go well, and they call that the perform stage. So again, that's a linear model that goes in one direction from start to the point where you actually are performing well together. Okay. Second model is the pendulum model. Basically, the idea is that there's a lot of ebb and flow in terms of a team sport. Okay, so you may have really good team cohesion at one point, then swings to bad cohesion, then swings back to good cohesion throughout the course of a season. Okay, so it's constantly changing, and you have to adapt to those changes that do occur in the team. So that's the pendulum, like again, moving back and forth like a pendulum. Okay, and then the last one is the life cycle model. That is, the team is formed and goes through stages like the stages of life would be. So there's the birth of the team, then there's growth throughout the team, and then you reach a peak, and then at some point the team disbands, which again would be essentially similar to the death of the team. Okay, so those are the three major models that are about the development and the lifespan, if you will, of a team. All right, so the other major thing that I wanted to get into in this chapter is the idea of what's called team building. Team building is the coaches or the sport type of term for the idea of having team cohesion. How can you make team cohesion exist and get better? Okay, and we divide this up into two different things: things that coaches can do, and things that the players can do. Okay, so what can coaches do to team build? Basically, you probably know some of these because if you have been on teams, either in high school or in college, or even younger than that, your coaches have probably done some of these things. Okay, so what are those things that can be done? First, treat everybody equally. As a coach, you don't play favorites. You don't punish some people for violating rules, but you give other people a pass, especially if they're the star athletes. You have to treat everyone the same way, or else there's going to be decreases in team cohesion. People are not going to be seeing eye to eye with each other. So treat everybody the same, and you're going to avoid a lot of different conflicts. Okay. Big thing, communicate. You have to communicate with each player, let them know what their role is on the team. Okay, let them know that they are valued members of the team. And again, if you don't communicate with the players, they're not going to communicate with you, and that's going to be a real issue in terms of each individual player's satisfaction. Which again, as we saw earlier in terms of the Martins and Peterson model, those team cohesion, satisfaction, performance are all linked to each other. Okay, highlight everyone's individual significance to the team, everybody's contribution to the team. So again, this is a little harder, especially when you, as a player, do things that aren't really shown in any sort of stat sheet. Okay, so in baseball, maybe hit behind the runner. If there's a runner on second base, hit behind the runner to get the person over to third base. That's not really considered a sacrifice. It doesn't really show up in terms of anything. Breaking up double plays, there's no stat for that either. So basically, things that you are doing as a player should be recognized as, very important, as a vital contribution to your team, even if it doesn't show up in any other way. So the coaches have to, value that, communicate to the players, so they also feel like they're part of the team. Okay. The other highlight that I have for you is came from last year when Ryan Arcidiacono saved a ball going out of bounds, made this amazing pass that ultimately ended up in Zach Levine's hands, and he made a highlight-worthy dunk. But at the end of that play, you can see Coach Boylan jumping up off the sidelines and clapping and congratulating Arcidiacono for making this particular play. Again, probably not an assist. I'd have to double check whether he actually got an assist for that. But showing that amount of hustle was recognized immediately by the coach. Okay, so that's the type of thing that coaches have to do, again, to make each person on the team feel like they're successful and contributing to the team. Okay, other things. To increase pride in each of the subunits. This is especially important in team sports like football, where the team is so large, you can't really do a lot of individual attention to everybody. Okay, so some of the classic nicknames for defensive linemen in football have these great nicknames. Okay, going into the Wayback Machine, the Minnesota Vikings of the 1970s, Carl Eller, Jim Marshall. Okay, those they were known as the Purple People Eaters. Okay, because again, the Vikings team color is purple. All right, some of the other examples from basketball. Even though again basketball is not as big as a team as football, the Mavericks a couple of years ago, had a name for their bench players, and they called them the Mob, Mavericks off the bench. Okay, so again, if you have these little nicknames or team names for the subunits, it really instills idea of cohesion within the team, even if it's the smaller units within the team. Okay, all right. So nicknames are important. Turnover of personnel. Again, the coaches don't always have the ability to do this. That's more of a management thing too. Or in terms of college, you at most have people 4 years, and that's not even really that prevalent anymore, because you have a lot of one and dones now. Okay, so but some of the most successful teams recently, okay, in terms of the NCAA basketball teams, men's teams, have been ones that have kept together for a while. If you think about Duke with Zion Williamson, again, he's a one and done, and basically as great as a player as Zion was and is, they never reached the Final Four. Okay, where you have teams like Gonzaga, Villanova, that core had been together for a very, very long time, and reached not only the finals but won the finals. Okay, so there is a little bit of controversy. I have if you're really interested in this, I have a link to an article that shows the differences between the one and done schools and the teams that have been sticking together for a while. That is on the PowerPoints if you're interested in looking at that. Okay, but for the most part, you do want the turnover to be limited. Another example of this where this was a problem was 2 years ago with the Lakers. The LA Lakers basically, when the trade for Anthony Davis was, in the works, was rumored, the Lakers' performance actually seemed to go down. Again, we can't absolutely say this was the cause of it, but the thought that the whole team was going to be turned over, and the rumors that who was going to go. If you're always looking over your shoulder, performance is going to go down, and team cohesion is actually going to suffer as well. Okay, we talked about subunits. What we do want to do, though, is have pride in subunits, but we don't want things to get so insular that cliques develop. Okay, so you want everybody to get along with each other, but at the point where 3 or 4 players just become so much of a unit, personally and professionally, that they actually segment away from the rest of the team, then that's going to cause division within the team too. So you want to make sure that doesn't happen as a coach. You want to monitor any sort of clique formation. Okay, and the other thing is that you want to increase intrinsic motivation as much as possible. Okay, we went through that in the motivation chapter. What are the different things that you can do to help each player achieve a higher degree of intrinsic motivation? If that happens, better team cohesion, better performance. The other thing that most of you are familiar with too is, as coaches, you want to schedule any sort of extracurricular activities. For if you're interested in any sort of professional team, if you Google your team and bowling, you're probably going to find a video of your team bowling. Okay, so I've got one for the Pistons. I've used one for the Phoenix Suns for a while. The Mets have gone bowling. The Cavaliers have gone bowling with LeBron James. Okay, so maybe your sports teams, as high school or college athletes, maybe you've done, some extracurricular activities like bowling. The Oregon University of Oregon Ducks went river rafting. I know ducks going river rafting is sort of cool. But the other thing that I really admire about our athletics here in Oswego is that you guys do a lot of extracurricular activity, especially things that are related to charities as well. You do the leaf raking every year. Okay, you do a lot of different things that the sports teams help out with yards for yardley a lot. So they do a lot of things that actually do help not only the community, but by doing these things, it helps team cohesion as well. Okay, you can also do any sort of workshops where you do different training exercises, where you can do things like work on PetLep, do imagery training. Okay, anything along those lines. All right. Okay, so that's what coaches can do for team building. What players can do for team building. Know a little bit about your teammates. Again, you don't want to get too personal, but the more you know about each person on the team, the more you can get a sense of what makes them tick. What their likes and dislikes are, and it makes you feel like that person cares about you if you know a little bit about the other person. Okay, so you can also make sure that you take responsibility for anything that happens either on or off the playing field. So you don't want to assign blame to other people. That actually is very devastating to team cohesion. If you start blaming other people and not taking a responsibility yourself. Okay, so that's another thing that you have to do. Communicate with each other. And also if the coach isn't communicating with you and you feel like, hey, that's, coach has to tell me what my role is. Okay, if that's not happening, you have to go to the coach too. It's a two-way, situation. Coach should communicate with you. You should communicate with your coach. You also need to communicate with your teammates. In a team situation, next one, conflicts are going to arise. So what you want to do is make sure that you resolve these conflicts quickly. Probably the historically most famous one is when Kobe and Shaq were on the same team together. They did have conflicts. There were a number of times that they did resolve the conflicts. Okay, ultimately it didn't work eventually, but for a number of different years they would resolve these conflicts relatively quickly and succeed. Okay, next one, give 100% all the time. People are going to notice that if you're performing at a high level all the time. That's what this little link about Gianna is talking about Ryan Archidiakono again. Showing that Archidiakono really did give 100% all the time. Okay, make sacrifices. Okay, for each, especially if you're a senior player, make sure that you are showing that you do care about the team and you are going to make sacrifices for the team. And lastly, make sure no hazing occurs. Hazing does not help team cohesion. Duh. All right, so thank you very much. That does end just the chapter 10 on team cohesion, and we'll talk about leadership next time. Bye.